This is the Level Up Engineering Podcast, where we talk with some of the most successful engineering leaders who reveal actionable management insights that help you take your developer team to the next level. This episode is brought to you by Coding Sans, a software development agency building web applications from design to delivery with React, Node.js, and Angular. Check them out at codingsans.com.
Hello, everyone. I am Carolina Toth, host of the Level Up Engineering Podcast. And today I have another amazing guest here. And as you are probably aware, every other week I talk with very accomplished leaders of the technology industry. So welcome to the Level Up Engineering Podcast. Today, my guest is Sophie Wade. She is founder of the Flexcel network and also author of Empathy Works, the key to competitive advantage in the new era of work. So I think that we will have a really amazing conversation. But before that, please, Sophie, tell us a bit about yourself and what you do.
Thank you, Caroline. It's a delight to be on this podcast. And so my background is kind of eclectic. I'm English, grew up in London. I've worked in Hong Kong and Germany and Italy and France, where I went to business school. And I've been in the States now for over 15 years. So I've been all over the place. And I have always pretty much my first career was working at the intersection of technology and media/content. So it could be, long form content, short form content, or just information. So I have a lot of understanding about technology, but I am not a technologist. But I also understand how to or not to be interacting with technologists, because I've asked lots of stupid questions in the past, which just didn't get any answers. But so now my second career is all about the workplace and how to help people be working in different ways now that we've got to the future of work, a technology-driven situation and environment and circumstances, which is really changing the nature of work, how we're working and how we're doing business. So that's what I'm doing. And I've written touchy 2 books now, and I do a lot of speaking and consulting and helping people adapt for this new era of work.
Thank you. And this new era of work is catching up with us rather quickly. We are recording this episode at the very end of 2022, and I can definitely feel that everyone around me is pretty tired of all the things that have been going on in our lives, starting with COVID and following up with war and the global economy and whatnot. But before we get into just dissecting today's D&H, our topic today is quiet quitting and how empathy helps you setting healthy boundaries at work. I think this is a really awesome topic. It has been on the news very much lately. I'm sure it's partially because a lot of people are feeling like they have been putting too much time into their work. And it came up in one of our workshops at Coding Sans, the sponsor of this podcast. And we talked about quiet quitting, but we didn't actually start to conceptualize it. So I would like to ask you to give us a bit of an insight before we start talking about it. What is quiet quitting? How should we set its boundaries, and what is basically the definition when we talk about this?
I think overall the definition is when somebody has made a proactive choice because of this particular situation at work not to put discretionary effort into their job, to do what's required for their job. So they are fulfilling the obligations of their job, but they're not going above and beyond. So they're actually taking that action themselves, making a decision, and it can be to do with how their boss is treating them, that they've asked for particular, more flexibility, different benefits, and they just don't feel that they're being treated in the way that they feel that they're comfortable with. And so that they're making a proactive choice for whatever reason that they're going to, do or not do with that extra effort, but they're making a choice not to put that extra effort into their full-time job.
Mm-hmm. So it's if we would define it with averages or amounts, would you say it's not putting in 100%, or would you say it's like you put in the 100% in those 8 hours that you're paid for, and then you're done?
Yes, it could be defined in different ways, but generally, many employers are going to both expect you to do your 40 hours, or what, let's just say it's a full-time job, your 40 hours, and fulfill your task. So it's a both and. Whereas, there are certainly people who, if they're on results, paid and managed on a results basis, they could actually do all, achieve all the results that they need to in fewer than 40 hours, or it might take more than 40 hours. So it is doing sort of what the job requirements are, and that may indeed also require being on the job, at work or, wherever they are, for 40 hours. And I do think that it's important to be focused on results, and it does actually mean that you could be doing it. But it is doing 100% of what your job outline or your job contract or details are, and not doing that, putting that extra effort in. That is what engagement is. It's sort of putting in extra effort.
Mm-hmm. So would you say it's putting in minimum to not get fired from work? Is it?
No, I'm trying to. Sort of not getting fired. I think you could get fired by not putting the extra effort in. That really depends on your boss, and you may have actually quietly quit because you have a boss who is, not the best. But I think it's it's interesting because if a boss really tries to align you and tries to engage you with what you're good at and to your skills and strengths, you could be doing 40 hours work and actually going above and beyond just because you're engaged. But quietly quitting is sort of saying, I'm stepping back. I'm not going to be putting my best efforts in to come up with the best ideas. And if somebody notices that you really have changed your attitude and your approach, yes, you could get fired even if you're technically fulfilling it, because they're going to notice. So I think I don't know that it's doing the minimum. I think it's doing what is required.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, and sorry, this is kind of out of our specifics here, but I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. So if I am the sort of person who is most of the time going above and beyond and trying to excel in whatever task I get, and I suddenly decide, okay, I am not getting paid enough for this, and I need my sense of peace, and I don't want to be the person who goes above and beyond when the rest of the people are not putting in that much effort, and I stop perhaps excelling, and I stop striving for that excellence. That would be the definition of quiet quitting.
That's one of the definitions. I think, for the most part, does not tend to be people who are looking around saying, I'm putting all this effort in and nobody else is. It's much more about, I'm being treated in a way that I'm not comfortable with. I'm getting really, horrible projects. I really need flexibility and I'm not getting it, or I really want flexibility and it doesn't make sense that I'm not. There is some negative aspect in terms of what the interaction is with the person's boss. It could be the boss. It's often their particular supervisor, but it could be the company too. Mm-hmm. It's causing them to say, I don't want to use my effort in this way. And it may be that I'm using it in many other ways. That I may be, developing my side hustle, and using that to be, maybe I can't resign yet. I'm not quite part of the Great Resignation. I can't go and find another job right now for all kinds of reasons, but I'm going to use that extra effort in other ways to develop myself or find a new job or whatever that might be. So it tends to be that there is something negative going on in my particular job situation that I'm then, taking that energy back. And it could be that I'm sort of like, okay, I'm going to chill out for a while and just, this has been, I'm dealing with a mental health situation. There are many reasons to be stepping back, but it does tend to be that there's something
causing you
negative that I'm trying to step away from, and hopefully is the way I look at it, that person also then says, okay, now what can I do differently? And that's for me what the opportunity is that some people may be missing out on.
Right. So just to clarify even further for our audience and for me, work-life balance is when everything is probably going pretty well and you are just setting your boundaries to stop when you are done with your daily tasks and not go overboard and not work into the night because you enjoy your work, but say, okay, I'm done with this. Now it's time for me to relax, and you are still excelling at what you do. You just try to have those healthy boundaries. Please not if
well, I think it's different for everybody. I mean, for some people, work-life balance is work hard, play hard. So they'll be working really long hours and then go out and party all night. It really depends on the person. For somebody who, has kids, it may be, yes, saying, 6 o'clock, 7:30, 8 o'clock in the evening, that's when I stop. And then I will not answer a single email. I will make sure that I'm completely devoted to my kids, or my partner or whatever that might be. So it is tend to be about balance. The boundaries that I create for myself so that I'm comfortable. Now, it also doesn't have to be on a daily or weekly basis. It could be like, I have a project that I'm going to work intensively on, at work on a particular project or task. And then I'm going to take 2 weeks off, and that's going to be the balance, or 3 weeks off, or I'm going to work hard on a 6-month project, and then I'm going to take 3 months off, whatever it might be. I mean, there are lots of different ways to create that balance. Digital nomadism, right? That's another way of getting different types of balance. It's very, very different for different people, but it does tend to be this, a conscious effort to create the balance, the sort of equilibrium in your life between work and non-work activities that works for you. And it is different for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think I am trying, I'm starting to understand the concepts a little more. And there is another trend here, which is acting your wage. I'm sure a lot of younger listeners are familiar with this trend, where, in my understanding, you're not supposed to take on more responsibilities than what you're getting paid for. And how is quiet quitting relating to this? So
quiet quitting for me is somebody's been in a situation and has made an active choice to reduce how much effort they're putting in because of a situation or what was said or how they feel like they're being treated or it's just like, I'm not going to put that effort in anymore. Whereas acting your wage, it could be that you have done that and that's the state you're in now. But you could also get a job and know that, because of the 1 or 2 or 3 side hustles you have, or you need to, have some kind of steady income. I mean, this is the focus for a lot of Gen Zs, for a lot of the younger workers, is that knowing that they don't have any job security, they have at least, one, trying to have it as a steady paying job and some other income streams as well. So they're going into their job and they're not changing the level of effort they're putting in. It's staying, they're sort of saying, I'm going to do this job is not my, not my passion. I'm going to do what's required. And I have these other things in my passion project, but I'm going to do what's required. I'm not sort of like making an active statement. I'm not pulling back, but I'm just doing my job. And honestly, to the great extent, that's what we're paid to do. We're paid to do our job. So if you're acting a wage, that's okay. That's the idea back from, a century ago was you get paid and you do fulfill your tasks. If we want people to engage and to go above and beyond, that's a whole different thing. And that's what obviously managers and leaders want. But that actually does require effort and energy from them in order to try and help people find what they're really passionate about, understand what their skills and strengths are, and get them, connected with their work through purpose and meaning, all those kind of things, and to increase so that they aren't just acting their wage, they're actually going above and beyond. That's what employee engagement is, and what a lot of, most managers are trying to do if they can.
I love that. Dearest managers, please take some notes. Okay, so sailing onto different seas. Now that we have quiet quitting under the hood of our dictionaries, is this a new trend, or has it always been happening, or are we just now focusing on ourselves a little more after COVID and after staying at home for a while? Is it that we are now expanding our vocabularies, or is it a new thing?
Look, the Gallup data shows that for years, about 2/3 of the population has not been engaged in the work. So there's disengaged, which is, tend to be about 11 to 13%. Those are people who are sort of actively undermining what's going on at a company. Then you have a small percentage also, maybe it's 20% globally, who are engaged, really engaged in their work. And the whole rest of it, which is, tend to be about 2/3 of the working population, is not engaged. So they're doing what they need to do. They're showing up, going and fulfilling their tasks. So that has been going on for a long, long time. And we haven't been focused on employee engagement. We haven't been, managers haven't been helping people sort of orient towards their skills and strengths and seeing what changes that make. So that has been going on for a long time. Quiet quitting, actually being in a situation where you were putting more effort in and then suddenly making a decision to kind of change, that may be more, I do think is probably more prevalent now because of the situation that happened during the pandemic. And it's not so much the pandemic, but really because we were in situations where we could suddenly look at work with a different lens and had different experiences. I mean, and I'm not talking about frontline workers who were, working so hard and under incredibly stressful situations, but that also caused them to kind of go like, what really matters? Like, is this what my life is, supposed to be about? And I think it's been particularly prevalent in the US, which has a very, very, the work culture is very strong in terms of, working in the evenings, being expected to work weekends without question, which is not
going on,
so many countries around the world having
going on maternity leave for the US workers. I was just talking about this on another show, and we were just talking about how really job security is not that heavy for US workers.
Zero. And this is the issue. So there used to be job security in the US, and in the 1950s, 1960s, and there was. So this is where, for me, this all originally comes from. Is that the equation used to be different, and it's the social contract that part of the job bundle was that I, as a worker, got lifelong employment, which to me meant working at a particular company for the whole of my life, which I think would be a horror story for many people now. But no company is giving that. So the idea was I'd put long hours in, and eventually over time, I will, build up a little nest egg, and then I will be able to retire, and there's a pension. Now, that entire equation does not exist anymore. And as a result, it means that I, as a worker, have to be much more engaged and proactive about trying to find income security, a job security. How am I going to develop my career, which is nonlinear? How, where am I going to go? This company, how can I make sure that I have competitive skills? Because, any company I'm at, maybe they're not going to help me update my skills, which means I'm not necessarily going to stay competitive. I mean, it's a very, very, very different landscape. And as a result, it means that workers are engaging with their employer and thinking about their careers, and have a different attitude and approach to work, and how they're going to sort of, prolong their careers. or develop their careers. And that sort of goes to fundamentally to what how much effort they put into what element of their work activity. So I might put all my work effort into this particular work activity, but not that one. So this could be my side hustle. This could be my full-time job that I'm doing to make sure that I have, as I said, some, I can pay my rent, but then this is the thing that I'm passionate about. So I think, when we've had such a challenging work culture in the US, it has caused people during the pandemic to rethink, because they had different circumstances, to rethink what matters, what role work plays. And when you've seen a lot of people dying and also had the opportunity to sort of say, well, I could actually work really effectively from home. Well, hang on a second. What does that mean I could do? Or I could work for the same company that I've always been working at. I really love working for this company, but I can live in a different city. And if I have, kids and I, live in a small apartment in New York or Detroit, I could go and live, in a more rural area and we could have a garden. I mean, so this is the epiphany that a lot of workers are having, particularly in this country, but also around the world, to say, let me rethink my working life, that integrated aspect, and set things up differently. And that's also applying to how much engagement I'm putting into any particular, as I said, work activity, because this is the sort of the long overdue rebalancing of the social contract to understand, what do I want my life to look like? Because the balance of compensation that I'm getting from my full-time job has changed a lot.
Mm-hmm. In listening to you, it kind of sounds like, I don't want to use too strong of a word here, but do you kind of agree or support this tendency to quiet quit when, as you defined, the situation is not adequate or isn't helping an employee to become better and excel at their job, or they feel they aren't being treated fairly?
I think that people, look, if you go into a job, it's important to fulfill your obligations. There are lots of bosses. People tend to quit a job because they're of their boss. And there are, unfortunately, a lot of people out there who are really not nice to work for, or not even nice. It's because they're not respectful. They don't treat them well. They don't listen to them. There are so many. I mean, we spend hours and hours at work every day, and there are some bottom level, sort of base level, sort of fundamental, values and behaviors that I think are appropriate at work. So if somebody's not getting that, and I think we're in a period of flux and enormous amount of change going on, that it's hard. We have a lot of tension because particularly older leaders who've been working the same way for, decades, it's hard for them to make change. And so there's a lot of tension between them and younger folks. So I understand when there's a disconnect between what somebody who's often younger, wants and the new ways that they want to work, which makes sense because of the technologies that we have, and the older leaders who are looking. So I do understand and I do support the idea that someone sort of says, okay, I do think that I want to have a different work setup, and I can't necessarily leave my particular job right now. So I'm going to pull back a bit, but I'm still going to get my work done. I'm still going to fulfill my obligations. I don't have a problem with that. What I would say is, for that particular worker, don't quit, whether you're quitting, quietly, or you're quitting physically and walking out the door. It's not all about you. It is also about what you're getting out of and giving to the organization. But thinking about it from your own perspective, what more could you learn on your job? Can you change the situation with your boss? You may have tried, but let's just say, can you change it? Because the best thing for you, for you as an employee, is to kind of like try and reframe the situation. Can you look at it differently? Can you encourage your boss to be treating you in a different way? Because many of them just aren't aware of how much is changing. And so there are ways to sort of try and change that situation. If that situation can't be improved, then where else could you go and work in the company? If there might be another place, because that's the next easier, or can be the next easier place to go, so that you're learning new skills, you've got more experience, you are bettering yourself, and so that as and when you do leave that particular company, you're in a better situation and you've done more for the company. So there's a win-win. You can get references. Are there more people that you can meet, you can network with? So there are lots of things that you can do, I think, in that situation, even if you quietly quit, but to try and improve the situation before you really pull back, and then be thoughtful about how you're pulling back and where are you putting the effort. And if you're really not putting that effort anywhere, what does that mean for your life overall? And it may be you just kind of go, I'm so burned out. And that's fine. Totally understand that too. So in that sense, yeah, I do really understand. And I think all the different elements and the circumstances are really important. But I think we're in a very different type of business era and work circumstances and environments that mean each person needs to be very thoughtful and proactive about how they're managing and developing their career and job progression. And so if they're quiet quitting, what else are they doing? What's the next step, and when are they going to take that? So always being thoughtful about that is the key for me.
Thank you. There are a couple of things there that I would like to highlight, just for us to be on the same page and for me to process a little bit as well. So first of all, the only thing you can change is yourself. So if your boss is not treating you well, give feedback. Try to change the boss, try to get into a different project group, try to join a new team within the same company, because you already have friends in the company, you already have a support group. It's probably easier for you to move to a different team than to move to a different company. And own your circumstances. What it made me think of is, like sort of this victim mindset, like, you don't, bless you. You aren't a victim of your circumstances if you believe you have power to change your circumstances. So what I hear you say is, look at your surroundings, look at your situation, and see where you can change how you are being treated, or what is happening to you, or how the organization is helping you or not helping you.
Right. Exactly. And that reframing is incredibly important. And it can also be helpful. I mean, the economic situation is very difficult in so many places, in so many sectors, in so many countries. Just actually alerting your manager or whoever your supervisor is, and sort of saying, "Hey, look, I really love XYZ or X." They may not be paying attention to that. They're just so busy with everything that's going on. It's not to blame them for that, but just to say, "Hey, on that next project, if there's next project, I would really love to be doing more of this." And if they sort of say, no, you can't, but you sort of say, well, maybe, not this one, but the next one, is that possible? Or how about this? Own it, as you say, and offer some suggestions, and then, see what you can do to change the situation for yourself, so that you can be, still be contributing to the company, and look like you're contributing to the company, but you're also doing something which is more enjoyable for you, that's bettering you, that's going to help you, as I said, be competitive, have more security, in the sense that you're continuing to grow and progress in your career and in your skill sets.
Right. I kind of notice a shift in my own mindset, and it was brought to me by what you just said. I was, and there are a couple things there, so we will unpack it in a second. I was brought up by, or my parents were Gen Xers, so they had a very different kind of mindset about work, and about how much you had to put in to work, and about how much flexibility you had when you were to change jobs and when you were to ask for your raise or whatever. And I see it around me that some people are very much detached from the company or from the organization or from their work. And it gives them a sort of distance that makes them be less emotionally involved. Yeah. And that sometimes helps them and other times it doesn't help them. But we can talk about that in a second here. But what I noticed on myself these days, and that partially might be due to the fact that it's the end of 2022 and we are all tired of everything. But what I've noticed is that I've always been one to give my best efforts, to go above and beyond. Like with this podcast, I joined the company as a coach and I was like, why don't we do a podcast? This is going to be so great.
Yeah.
Keep on going, like it doesn't matter whether or not it's in your job description. If you think it's a good idea and if you enjoy doing it and if you think it's going to better the company, then why not do it? And in the last couple of weeks, I've been thinking, what am I getting out of this? Where is Carolina in this entire game of chess?
Yep.
And is that what somebody who is quitting thinking? Or are those the signs that some of our listeners can check whether or not they notice on themselves?
Yeah, so it could be that. First of all, it could be that somebody has said, okay, this isn't my job description, but I think it'd be really cool for our company, and I'd be really interested to try and launch a podcast. And they get shut down. Every new idea, their boss is like, no, we can't do it and whatever. And it may be true that the company is not interested in doing that and it would be too complicated and whatever. But a lot of no's sort of kind of like, okay, fine, I'm just not going to bother. I'm not going to come up with any more ideas because there's no point. And then it could be you sort of quiet quit and then you put that effort somewhere else. I think, what you're talking about is more that you've made this effort, you've launched a podcast, and then it is a very positive, it's not necessarily about quiet quitting, it's very positive to kind of go, so what now? So what is the next step? I think, having a podcast myself, I know that I learn so much from all the conversations I have. So I know that that's a great benefit to me. So what do I do with that? What more can I do with that contributes both to, and I do look at it in terms of, they've enabled, I'm doing this podcast, so, and I'm getting out of it. What more can I do that is beneficial for everybody in terms of the next progression? So I think it really is. It's very beneficial for every employee to continually be saying, because they do need to own their career development now, because it isn't, you don't go into a company and have this linear continuous progression that's just, it doesn't happen automatically. And it's much harder now. It's so nonlinear. And the next sort of, advancement could be horizontally, it could be diagonally, and it also could be vertically. Each person needs to own it. So having those conversations with yourself and then talking to other people in your group, in other divisions, kind of like, well, maybe I can do a side project. If I can't move to do a project or work in that area, maybe I can do a side project. And there are definitely companies that are saying, yeah, you can work on a project. There are companies like Atlassian, where they actually have a very different, a really interesting approach, which is they sort of say, who wants to work on this project? And a great range of people can just put their hand up and say, I want to work on that project. That's really cool, because then you can get to experience other people, other areas, other types of work. So I think there are lots of different ways that you can be thinking about what's next for me. And I do also encourage, managers and leaders that if the next step for one of my team members, I can't fulfill it in my division or even somewhere else in the company, to help them leave. Right. That's okay, because they also may come back in the future. They need to get other experiences. If our company can't do that, then that's okay too. And what an amazing ambassador they're going to be for my company. If I've helped them leave, they're going to be like, Sophie's awesome. That company is so great. And, there are lots of things like the edges of our companies are very different now. And I may need you to work on a project, as a freelancer, as a, specialist consultant in the future. I mean, there are lots and lots of ways to be helping nurture employees and non-employees to the benefit of the business.
Right. I usually tell it to the employees after I onboard them to the company at the very end. We always make a pact and say, this is the beginning, but let's talk about the end, because this is the 21st century and nobody is expected to retire from here. So if you feel like something is not working out, let's talk about it. And if we can't fix it, then let's move on with our lives.
And the fact that you've had that conversation enables me, if you're onboarding me, to not quietly quit before I've talked to you, because you've opened up that conversation to sort of say, if something isn't working out, I'm not going to quietly quit before I kind of go, you know what, Carolina, what you said when I first came on board? Well, this isn't kind of what I thought, it's just not going this in the way that I thought. But I have that, I feel safe to ask you to have that conversation so that we can realign what I'm doing. And you might say, hey, look, I can't do anything about it now, but let's just see what I can do in the future, because actually talent mobility in organizations is really not easy yet. It is, people are understanding. It's actually the data shows that in many companies, it is actually easier to leave the company than move internally. Now, I think those dynamics are definitely going to change. But if there's a safe environment, a trust-based environment, an empathetic environment, and I've heard that from you, then I'm much more likely to actually talk to you first before I quietly quit.
Right. Let's hope so. If any of my colleagues are listening to this, exactly. I'm always here to talk about your ideas and whatever is hurting you or uplifting you.
Right.
All right. So we have talked about the individual, and we have talked about some ways to cope with feelings of dissatisfaction at work. Let's talk to some of our leaders here. What can they do if they notice some signs of on someone of their team, or if there are a couple of people in their team who seem to be showing some signs of quiet quitting? What should they be thinking about, these leaders?
Because so much of the quiet quitting is about how team members feel. It tends to be people, at the low levels of the organization. Ask them what's going on. This is the question. You don't know whether somebody has actually this is where, I really talk about empathy, because it's kind of like, what is going on? Because I could make an assumption like you're quietly quitting, but in fact, you may be having a mental health moment, or you may be, your dog might be sick and you may be really, really upset about that. And that's what's causing it, because there's also going to be some kind of reaction in me if I think you've quietly quit. So I need to make sure that that's what's going on. And the signals and the alerts that you can get or you can observe can look the same depending on what's going on. Or you may be incredibly frustrated because, your broadband is down and it's just really frustrating how much you're able to do your work. Or you were just offline, or there was a brownout in your area, whatever it might be, that was always actually really frustrating you, or, not enabling you to contribute as much as you normally do. So the key thing, first of all, is for the person really to check what's going on and try and have as much of an open conversation. And if you as a leader or a manager don't have the kind of relationship where you can have an honest and open and a good conversation, then I do think you can look at yourself and say, I it would be beneficial to have a better relationship. You don't have to be friends, you don't have to be buddies, but have a better relationship, a trust-based relationship where that employee can talk to you openly, because otherwise it's going to be very hard, because they're just not going to say, be frank about it. And they go like, no, everything's fine. And you're not going to know. And they may either walk out on you or just completely, disengage. So I do think that it is the responsibility of leaders to have to nurture the kind of culture within a team. It might not be company-wide, but you can do it within your team, so that you do have the relationships, you do have the connections, that people can feel safe to speak up and actually share what's going on. So the key thing would be make sure that you're not judging or making assumptions about the signals that you're noticing, and ensure that you do have the relationships where you can enable someone to feel safe. Or if you don't quite yet, just say, hey, look, just, this is, off the record, I really just want to sort of see what's going on, and maybe, just give me some feedback about, what we could be doing differently, so that you you seem to have been a bit disconnected from your job, without making some negative comments that are going to get a defensive reaction. It's say, what's going on here? Open questions are always helpful. And then listen to the answer, really trying to make sure that you're withholding judgment. So this is very much about how empathy works. Lots and lots of listening. And then there's an enormous amount of misunderstanding particularly between generations, because we have such different lived experiences. Yes, I'm Gen X. Hard work, the way I define hard work, is probably long hours, late, burning the midnight oil type thing. Whereas for someone who has just come into the workforce, it may be working very intensively, but only 40 hours a week. So I don't want to, if someone says, well, I've been working really hard, and I'd be kind of like, yeah, they didn't work past 5 o'clock any day. That's not the point. So really restating something like, well, okay, Carolina, but how asking open questions, what was it that was going on with that project? Is it something that we could be doing differently? Really trying to explore what's going on, so that I have a sense of what's wrong, or what's not wrong, but what could be done differently to change your situation. And it's not about pandering to you. It's not about, mollycoddling young workers. If I, as a manager, want to help you perform, it's really understanding you as an individual and what engages you, what you're good at, what you enjoy doing, because those two tend to be very closely aligned. And that's going to benefit me as a manager. And we're going to have more fun, be engaged, do better work, achieve, it's a win-win.
Right. I completely agree with you. And here is a little bit of advertisement. The Level Up Engineering podcast has many episodes on how to handle one-on-ones, how to create a healthy feedback culture, how to be open for feedback. So, serious managers and listeners, please go ahead and check out those episodes, because creating this kind of trusted environment is probably the first thing for prevention. Yeah. Before anybody decides to quit your organization or your team. So we are approaching the end of our conversation here. I would really like to ask you what you think a manager could do if they have talked to an employee and the employee said, yes, I just decided that I wasn't being treated fairly, so I am just doing what my job requires me to, but I don't really think about how it could be better or how I could improve, because I feel like I am really just fine not giving in a minute more than 40 hours a week. And they say, I have researched quiet quitting and I have quiet quit myself. What do you suggest a manager does in this situation?
That's a challenging one. I think, the reality is that if the person is fulfilling their tasks and, doing their job, I mean, if it's a very creative job, that those moments of incredible creativity that might happen in the shower or when they're going on a walk with their dog. Those are the moments where you sort of feel like somebody's going above and beyond. So I think in some of the most creative and innovative roles, that may be harder to kind of go, okay, just fulfill your job because of the nature of the work. But there are many roles which don't, that if somebody is fulfilling their job requirements, they're fulfilling their job requirements. And it may be that they have all kinds of obligations on the side or side hustles, which give them some more, that they're developing their passions, or they are able to have some more financial stability. I mean, I do understand the need that if the role, the job that the person has working on my team, that I cannot guarantee them any kind of security whatsoever. I do have empathy for the fact that if they want to have a side hustle, I truly do. I understand that situation, because I also can't kind of go, yes, don't worry, please, really, really engage. And because in return for job security, because I can't do that. What I would still try and do is work with them to see what it is that they really do enjoy, and see if I can engage them a bit, just so they have, they enjoy it more. I mean, where this all comes down, goes back to is, one, there was a different, there was a different social contract, that you did have an equation where you got job security, but it was also based on the fact that the Protestant Calvinist doctrines said that you had to suffer in your work to go to heaven.
Okay, let's not get into that.
My point is that that's not, when we don't even think about that, there's a burden of why work actually needs to be bad in order to have people be considered good workers. And I think that I'm not calling on like trying to make this religious in any way, but I'm just saying that why we're working in a certain way, and the ability to actually look at work as being something that we can really enjoy, and connecting with something that we enjoy is something that I think we can do now. We can have a different perspective about work, because that was a time and a place, and people can still certainly view it however they want to. But I do think that there's a new way of looking at work, which is okay.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate you saying that. I really agree with you. And dearest listeners and watchers, I am here from Eastern Europe. So it's definitely different when we look at work and how we are treated, because we were in the Soviet bloc for so long. And reframing how we are the masters of our own universe, I think creates a very different narrative for how we behave at work. Very quickly, because we are really out of time, but I love having you on the show. What are your projections for the future? Do you think quiet quitting is here to stay? And do you have any words of advice for leaders who are listening to us? What should they do in order to combat this trend, or should they try to combat this trend?
I think, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're going through a huge amount of change. This is a challenging period of flux. A lot is in addition to war situations, around the world, in Europe, a lot of economic challenges, going into recession in different areas. These are challenging before you get to the fact that we're in a new era of work. The future of work arrived in 2020, and it is disrupting everything. There's so many different elements to it, which are very challenging. So one thing that I do say to leaders all the time is, we need to try and engage every single worker because the bar has been raised. The work is non-linear now. It's not sort of linear and static and projectable out for 10 years. It's much more networked, teamwork, much more project work. Harvard Business Review says the project economy has arrived. And non-routine work, which means we need to be working together and working much more closely together and understanding each other and being engaged in that. Otherwise, a lot of this collaboration is not going to go so well. So I think the pressure on employees, the pressure on leaders is much greater. So the more that we can be working together and engaged is going to help it all go much better and have the results be better and have the business stay competitive. So I think the effort that leaders can put in, if they actually focus on each employee and try and understand what's going on with them, try and align them and engage them and motivate them, whatever side hustle they're doing, whatever, just like to get that work done. And if they can get them to go above and beyond, great. Because, work is more challenging. The whole thing is more challenging. So if people are, quite critical, like, understanding what's going on, whatever that might be. And I think judgments, are beneficial to step away from, because this period of change is going to go on for a while. So I think, just being empathetic about, towards yourself, but also towards your team, so that you can all do your best work together is going to be the most important thing. Otherwise, it's going to be, a headache and very challenging for all of us.
Right. I love that. Thank you very much. To kind of conclude our discussion here, there are a couple things that really stuck with me. First of all, I think we are in an era where we are very likely to give out labels to everyone, like he's such a narcissist, she is quiet quitting, and from what I've heard you say, you said don't diagnose early. Let's reframe ourselves from thinking that we know what the other person is going through or whatever is in their head, and try ask open-ended questions and build that trust, as you said, before you ever kind of give way to your basic human reaction of categorizing people into different boxes, because they are all just as special and different and quirky as you might define yourself.
Exactly.
And secondly, from what I heard, I'm sorry, it's the end of the year is coming in with a little bit of an immune system breakdown for me. From what I heard you say, is self-reflection. It sounds like a lot of people should spend some time in thinking about how they are feeling and what they expect from their organization and how they can influence the organization, how they can manage up, how they can manage their own time, and what they can do to actually create a sense of contentment for themselves, or a sense of content for themselves, so that they know in what kind of a situation they are and they can influence the situation thoughtfully.
Beautifully put. Thank you.
We have had a really, really excellent conversation. I thank you for staying here with us today. Is there anything else that you'd like to add? Do you have a book coming up, or any kind of projects that you might give a shout out to, or any words of advice to any of our listeners?
I just, my book, Empathy Works, just there, it's really about the future of work, and the fact that the future of work really is technology driven, and how much technology is now integrated and is highly connected and changing the processes and all the different ways that business operations are working, and how, as you talk about these projects and non-routine work and teamwork, that is raising the sort of the counterbalance of the technologies is talent, and really focusing on us as individuals and how we're working together. So when I think about empathy, when I think about how to really be most productive and understand yourself. Empathy starts with self-awareness and being aware of other people. That's really going to help anybody's situation. So in my book, but generally look at it in terms of empathy habits, how to change it, like do that, listening much more, asking open questions. There are lots of little things that you can do, the listeners can do and learn from, and whether it's my book or elsewhere, over the next few weeks and going into the new year, like think about how to be working better with your, as you said, managing up, managing down, managing with your, learning and understanding your peers. That's going to really be the most beneficial thing that will benefit you across the board, and going forward in your life. And, personally, we tend to use more empathy and understanding in our personal lives. We just haven't used it in our professional lives, and it really could help.
Right. Thank you, Sophie. Where can our listeners follow your work?
So LinkedIn is one of the places that I am very active. Also on Twitter, at A Sophie Wade, but my website also sophiewade.com and flexcelnetwork.com. And I do have a podcast, which is Transforming Work with Sophie Wade. And that's all interviewing people who are all sort of working in different ways to navigate and succeed in this new environment. Thank you, Carolina.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Dearest Level Up Engineering podcast watchers and listeners, I am Carolina Toth. Today, my guest was founder of the Flexcel Network, Sophie Wade, and we had an awesome conversation about quiet quitting and empathy and how we can diagnose ourselves and maybe ask questions of others. Thank you, Sophie, for joining us today, and I hope I will see everyone next time.
Thanks for staying with Level Up Engineering. If you enjoyed this podcast, so will your friends. Share this episode on your favorite social networking platform. To stay up to date with our content, follow Level Up Engineering on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or Google Podcast. Brought to you by Coding Sans, a software development agency building web applications with Angular and Node.js. Check them out at codingsans.com.